He waited until the table was full. That was the part one kept returning to afterward. Not the words themselves, though those were precise enough to leave marks. It was the timing. The deliberate choice to say it when my mother was seated directly across from me, when my aunt was mid-laugh at something someone else had said, when the holiday candles were lit and the wine had been poured and everyone was comfortable enough to let their real selves surface. My cousin Derek set down his glass, not gently. The kind of set down that announces itself. "I'm just going to say what everyone's thinking," he said. Nobody told him not to. "You're not a hero, Renata." He smiled the way people smile when they've been rehearsing something. "You pushed paper in a secure building somewhere and came home with a chest full of ribbons for it. The rest of us just don't say it out loud." Several people looked at their plates. My mother's hand tightened around her fork. I said nothing. Because 40 minutes earlier, I had watched 3 black SUVs park quietly at the end of my aunt's driveway. And I already knew exactly how this evening was going to end. Before the story gets darker, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what city you are watching from. Because betrayal does not always come from enemies. Sometimes, it comes from the person who said they would wait for you. And sometimes, they forget who they are dealing with. My name is Sergeant Major Renata Voss. I am 36 years old. I served 14 years in the United States Army, attached for the last 6 of those years to a Special Operations Support Unit operating under Joint Task Force Authority, the kind of assignment that does not appear on public rosters, does not generate press releases, and does not come with a detailed job description you can explain at holiday dinners. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the oldest child of a retired Army Staff Sergeant father and a schoolteacher mother who believed, with absolute conviction, that discipline and education were the twin foundations of every worthwhile life. We were not wealthy, we were structured. There is a difference, and I learned it early. I enlisted at 22 after completing my undergraduate degree in international affairs at Penn State. My ROTC commission came through simultaneously, but I chose enlisted entry deliberately. I wanted to understand the Army from the ground up before I ever presumed to lead anyone through it. That decision shaped everything that came after. Over 14 years I completed 3 combat deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to an operational theater I am not at liberty to name publicly even now. I earned the Bronze Star with Valor device during my 2nd deployment for actions during a 20-minute engagement outside Kandahar that I still do not discuss in detail at family gatherings. Or anywhere else, for that matter. I also earned the Army Commendation Medal 3 times, the Meritorious Service Medal twice, and a classified unit citation that exists in my personnel file but carries no public description. The ribbons Derek referenced at dinner represented things he would never be clear to know about. That was, in some ways, the entire problem. Derek Voss was my father's brother's son, 39 years old. He had spent his career in commercial real estate in Philadelphia, and had done well enough at it to develop the particular confidence of men who mistake financial success for general superiority. He was not cruel by nature, that was the complicated part. He was the kind of person who could be genuinely warm in the right circumstances, generous at Christmas, funny at summer cookouts, reliably present at the family events that required presence. He coached his son's little league team. He remembered birthdays. But Derek had decided, somewhere in the years I was overseas, that my military service was a kind of performance. An extended dramatic gesture by a woman who needed to feel important. I think it began the year I missed his wedding for a deployment I could not discuss. He never fully forgave me for that absence, and because he could not understand the reason, he eventually decided there was no good reason at all. The first time he said something cutting was 3 years ago, at my parents' anniversary dinner. "Renata," he said lightly, passing the bread basket. "I saw your dad's old unit had a reunion. Didn't know the Army had reunions for the people who stayed behind the wire." Everyone laughed. My father stiffened slightly. I passed the bread basket back and said nothing. I had learned a long time ago that silence was not weakness. Silence was selection. You chose your moments carefully, and you did not spend ammunition on targets that didn't matter. Derek was not a target. Not yet. The pattern established itself quietly over the following 2 years, the way most damaging things do, gradually enough that each individual moment seemed dismissible, but consistently enough that the accumulation became its own kind of assault. At my cousin Brianna's graduation dinner, Derek mentioned to the table that he'd read an article about military budget waste. All those support personnel, he said, looking at me briefly, drawing combat pay for sitting in air-conditioned buildings. No offense, Renata. He smiled. Just what the article said. Several relatives nodded vaguely, the way people nod when they want to seem informed. My mother changed the subject. I ate my dinner. At my uncle's retirement party 8 months later, a family friend asked me directly what I did in the army. Before I could answer, Derek cut in pleasantly. She's in logistics, essentially, important work. Keeps the real soldiers supplied. He winked at me. Right. The family friend nodded politely and moved on to the next conversation. I looked at Derek for one long second, then I picked up my drink. The third incident was worse because it involved my father. We were at a 4th of July gathering at Derek's house. My father, who has served 22 years and understood exactly what classified assignments meant and did not mean, was standing near the grill when Derek loudly told a group of neighbors that his cousin was kind of military, more the administrative side. My father set his plate down and walked inside without speaking. I found him in Derek's kitchen 10 minutes later, standing at the window with his arms crossed, jaw tight. He doesn't know, I said quietly. He doesn't want to know, my father replied. That's different. The fourth and final incident before the dinner was a social media post. Derek shared a veterans tribute video with a comment beneath it. Something about real heroes versus people who wear the uniform for the benefits. He tagged 3 people. He did not tag me. But my cousin Brianna saw it and sent it to me with a single question mark. I screenshotted it, saved it, and said nothing. Because something was already in motion that Derek had no knowledge of. 11 days before the Thanksgiving dinner, I had received a phone call from a number I recognized immediately. Joint Task Force Coordination. The voice on the other end gave me a date, a location, and 3 words that told me everything I needed to know about how the next month of my life was going to unfold. I could not share that information with my family. But I could show up to Thanksgiving dinner and let the evening proceed however it was going to proceed. And I could wait. I arrived at my Aunt Gloria's house in Harrisburg at 4:30 on Thanksgiving afternoon, 45 minutes before dinner was scheduled. The 3 black SUVs were already there. Not parked in the driveway. That would have been conspicuous. They were positioned at the far end of the residential street, engines off, no visible markings. The kind of parking that civilians never notice, and that people with certain kinds of training notice immediately. I recognized the vehicle profile from Joint Operations Coordination, Protective Detail Protocol, Pre-position and hold. I sat in my own car for a moment and looked at them. Then I went inside, hung up my coat, hugged my aunt, complimented the centerpiece, and took my assigned seat at the far end of the table. The dinner progressed normally for the first hour. Roles were passed. Old stories were told. My uncle made the same joke about cranberry sauce he made every year. My mother caught my eye twice across the table with the particular look she used when she was trying to determine whether I was all right. I smiled both times. I was entirely all right. I was, in fact, the calmest person in that room. Derek arrived 40 minutes late, carrying a bottle of wine and a rehearsed apology for the traffic, and settled into his seat with the easy authority of a man who had never once doubted his welcome in any room. He made it 50 minutes before he said it. I had estimated 45. Close enough. I want to be precise about what happened next, because the details matter. I did not respond to Derek immediately. I set down my fork with the same unhurried movement, I used when receiving bad intelligence during a briefing, the deliberate stillness that communicates to everyone watching that the person holding it has already calculated 3 responses and is deciding between them. My mother started to speak. I caught her eye and gave the smallest shake of my head. She stopped. My father, seated at the other end of the table, looked at his plate. His jaw was tight, but he trusted me. After 14 years, he had learned to trust my timing. I picked up my water glass, took one measured sip. Then I looked at Derek calmly. "You might want to finish your dinner," I said quietly. He laughed. "Why is that?" "Because in about 15 minutes, you're going to be less hungry." Derek looked around the table with an expression designed to invite others into his amusement. A few relatives looked uncertain. Nobody laughed. He turned back to me. "What does that mean?" I lifted my fork again and returned to my plate. "It means eat your dinner, Derek." He opened his mouth. The doorbell rang. My Aunt Gloria answered the door. I heard her sharp intake of breath from the dining room, not frightened, startled. The particular sound a person makes when something stands on their porch that does not fit the category of things they expected on Thanksgiving evening. 3 men in dark suits entered the hallway. Earpieces, the quiet, economical movement of people trained to take up exactly as much space as the situation requires and no more. The lead agent, tall, mid-40s, calm, looked past my aunt toward the dining room entrance. "We're looking for Sergeant Major Renata Voss," he said. Not loudly. He didn't need to be loud. The dining room went completely silent. Every head turned toward me. Derek's fork stopped moving halfway to his plate. I set my napkin on the table, pushed my chair back, and stood, unhurried, the way I had stood in 100 briefing rooms and command centers and pre-operation assembly points over 14 years. "That's me," I said. The lead agent nodded once. "Ma'am, the director sends his regards. Your presence has been requested at the coordination briefing this evening. Cars outside when you're ready." He said it with the flat professional courtesy of someone delivering a routine message. In that dining room, at that table, among those people, there was nothing routine about any word of it. My aunt stood completely frozen in the hallway. My mother pressed one hand over her mouth. My father looked at his plate, but his shoulders had straightened in the way they always did when he was trying not to show pride and failing. Derek had not moved. His fork was still suspended. His face had gone through 3 distinct expressions in approximately 4 seconds: confusion, recalibration, and something that looked very much like the physical sensation of a floor disappearing beneath him. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. Then I looked at Derek one final time. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. "The director," I said simply, "is not a title they use for logistics." I buttoned my jacket. "Enjoy dessert." I walked out. Behind me, I heard the absolute silence of a room full of people quietly revising everything they thought they knew. I was gone for 4 days. I cannot describe the specifics of the coordination briefing or the operational activities connected to it. That is not obstruction. It is simply the nature of the work. Some things exist in spaces the public is better protected for never knowing about in detail. What I can tell you is that when I returned to Harrisburg on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, my phone had 41 unread messages. 11 were from family members I had not heard from in months. 6 were from Derek. I read his first message on the drive home. It was long, and it was careful, and it was the kind of message a person writes when they have spent 4 days sitting with the specific discomfort of having been publicly and comprehensively wrong. He did not fully understand what I did. He said so honestly. He acknowledged that he had made assumptions for years that he could not actually support. He said the word sorry 4 times, which for Derek, who had not said it easily in the 36 years I had known him, meant something. My father called me that same evening. "How'd the briefing go?" he asked. "Fine," I said. A pause, then quietly, "Proud of you, kid." That landed the way it always did, not loudly, not dramatically, just cleanly. Like something settling into the right place after years of being slightly misaligned. The following week, at my unit's annual coordination review, my commanding officer noted for the record that Sergeant Major Voss had received a formal letter of commendation from the director's office for her contributions to the Joint Task Force operation. It went into my permanent file. Derek never saw it. He didn't need to. The hardest part of coming home after that kind of operation was never the debriefing. It was the ordinary things. Buying coffee at the gas station near my apartment and listening to the radio play a song from the year one was deployed for the first time. Folding a uniform that still carried the particular smell of recycled air from a transport aircraft. Finding a note in my coat pocket. My mother's handwriting slipped in when she hugged me at Thanksgiving before the evening fell apart. That said only, "We see you. We always have." That one I kept. I sat alone at my kitchen table the evening I returned and ate reheated soup and watched the streetlights come on outside my window one by one. 14 years of service teaches you many things about silence. One of them is this: the silence after the work is done is different from all the others. It doesn't press against you. It simply rests. I have been asked many times over the years why I stayed in. Why I kept accepting assignments that could not be discussed, attending dinners where I could not explain myself, watching people build narratives about me from the empty spaces my silence left behind. The answer is not complicated. I did not serve for recognition. I did not carry classified briefings across 3 combat deployments so that my family would understand what I did over the rolls at Thanksgiving. I served because the work mattered. And I learned, slowly over 14 years and more close calls than I am allowed to count, that the truest form of strength is being fully, completely, irreversibly certain of your own worth without requiring a single person in that room to confirm it. Derek's opinion of me was never the measurement. It never was. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and leave your city in the comments. It means more than you know. I will see you in the next one.